February 9th, 2004, a nursing student crashes her car on a quiet rural highway. Minutes later, she vanishes into the cold night. No footprints, no trace. Was it a simple accident or a carefully planned disappearance? What really happened to Maura Murray on that winter evening? Before we uncover what Maura left behind, take a moment to subscribe to Crimes and Clues. Every week, we dive deep into the mysteries that refuse to fade, the cases that keep investigators awake, and the clues that still whisper the truth. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a story that could change how you see the world. Now, let's go back to the beginning to understand the life she left behind. On the night of February 9th, 2004, the temperature in rural Haverhill, New Hampshire dipped below freezing. A dark-colored Saturn sedan sat nose first in a snowbank along a two-lane highway called Route 112. Its hazard lights blinked, exhaust puffing faintly in the cold air. When police arrived minutes later, the driver was gone. That driver was Maura Murray, a 21-year-old nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She had driven north earlier that afternoon, leaving campus quietly, without telling her professors or most of her friends. In the 20 years since that night, her disappearance has become one of the most enduring mysteries in American true crime history. Born in 1982 in Hanson, Massachusetts, Maura grew up in a close, hard-working family. Athletic, academically gifted, she first attended West Point Military Academy, later transferring to UMass to pursue nursing. Friends describe her as driven, competitive, and private, a young woman who rarely revealed when she was struggling. In early 2004, by most accounts, life seemed typical. Classes, shifts at a campus security job, calls home to family. Yet underneath, stress had begun to build. School pressure, a recent car accident involving her father's vehicle, and the everyday challenges of young adulthood. None of it pointed clearly to what would happen next. Monday afternoon, February 9th, Maura emailed her professors that she'd be gone for a week due to a family emergency. There was no emergency. Around 4 p.m., she withdrew cash from an ATM and stopped at a liquor store. Receipts later confirmed the purchase of several bottles of wine and a box of Franzia. She left Amherst driving her 1996 Saturn SL. The destination, unknown. Investigators would later find that she'd searched online for lodging in the White Mountains region, a popular winter getaway about 2 hours north. Just after 7 p.m., residents on Route 112, also called the Wild Amanuensis Road, heard a thud of car hitting snow. When a local school bus driver stopped to help, the young woman declined, saying she'd already called roadside assistance. But phone records later showed no such call had been placed. He drove off, reporting the incident minutes later. By the time Sergeant Cecil Smith arrived at 7:46 p.m., the car was locked and empty. Inside, police found a map of New Hampshire, a half-empty bottle of wine, and an airbag stained from impact. Footprints led briefly down the roadside and then vanished into the snow. Officers searched nearby driveways, woods, and side roads. Within an hour, no trace of Maura appeared. The next day, New Hampshire State Police joined the case. Search dogs tracked the scent about 100 yards east from the crash site before losing it near an intersection, a detail that would later feed many theories, but remains unexplained. With sub-zero temperatures that night, investigators feared exposure might have claimed her, yet no footprints, clothing, or personal items were found in the surrounding woods. By morning, reporters were on scene. Family members drove up from Massachusetts, starting a search that would span weeks, then years. The scene itself offered few hard clues, only questions. Why drive alone into the mountains at dusk? Why tell professors there was a family emergency? And how does someone vanish on a road with houses on both sides? From that moment forward, every minute of Maura Murray's journey would be dissected by investigators, journalists, and later by thousands of people on the internet. The line between accident and intention would blur, leaving a trail of evidence both fragile and fascinating. The question that begins here still echoes 2 decades later. Was this a tragic accident or the start of something carefully planned? This video is based on verified public reports, law enforcement statements, and credible media sources. No conclusions are drawn about cause or responsibility. The case of Maura Murray remains open, and all parties are presumed innocent unless proven otherwise. To understand Maura Murray's disappearance, we have to step back before the snow, before the crash, before the questions that would consume 2 decades. We go back to a young woman with plans, potential, and pressures most of us never saw. Maura Murray was born May 4th, 1982, in Hanson, Massachusetts, the fourth of 5 children. Her parents, Fred and Lori Murray, raised their kids in a small-town home filled with discipline, faith, and ambition. Her father, an engineer, taught his children the value of hard work. Her mother, caring but firm, balanced family with teaching. Friends describe Maura as bright, athletic, and quietly determined, the kind of student who could achieve almost anything, yet often kept emotions to herself. By her teenage years, Maura excelled both academically and athletically. She ran cross-country, played basketball, and consistently earned top grades. Those achievements earned her admission to the United States Military Academy at West Point in 2000, a dream for many, but an environment of intense pressure. After a year, she transferred to University of Massachusetts Amherst, seeking a career in nursing. Classmates recall her as compassionate, organized, and focused, someone who wanted to care for others, but also carried the stress of independence. While studying full-time, Maura worked as a campus security guard, late shifts that often left her tired but financially stable. She maintained a long-distance relationship with a boyfriend studying at West Point. The couple spoke often by phone, planning visits between their demanding schedules. She also stayed close to her family, frequently calling her father for advice, and occasionally visiting home in Massachusetts. But beneath that structure, cracks began to show, not from scandal, but from the ordinary stress that builds when life's expectations collide. The months leading up to February 2004 were busy. Between coursework, clinical training, and personal commitments, Maura was stretched thin. In late January, she was involved in a minor car accident while driving her father's Toyota Corolla after a family visit. Insurance handled the claim, but according to her father, she was embarrassed and shaken by the mistake. Still, she returned to Amherst determined to focus on school. At UMass, Maura balanced the precision of nursing studies with the unpredictability of young adulthood, exams, friendships, and emotional distance from home. In the days before she vanished, classmates later reported that she seemed quiet but not visibly distressed. On February 5th, while on a security shift, she received a phone call that left her upset. Her supervisor later recalled her crying. Though the call's contents were never publicly revealed, whether it was personal or professional, investigators never confirmed. What's certain is that by the following Monday, February 9th, she decided to leave campus. Computer forensics would later reveal searches made from her laptop that morning, lodging near the White Mountains of New Hampshire, and directions to a small rental property. She also emailed professors about a fabricated family emergency and informed her employer she'd be away for a week. These communications would become a critical part of the timeline, proof that her trip, whatever its purpose, was intentional and planned within hours. That afternoon, she withdrew $280 from an ATM, almost all the cash in her account, and stopped at a nearby liquor store. Surveillance footage later released showed her calm, polite, and alone. Then she began driving north. Investigators traced her route from Amherst through Woodsville toward the White Mountains, a region known for isolation and limited cell coverage. In 2004, in her dorm room, police later found her belongings neatly arranged, textbooks stacked, personal items undisturbed. Her phone, credit cards, and ATM card disappeared with her, but none were used after that night. A small email from her boyfriend that Monday afternoon went unanswered, one of many communications frozen in time. For her family, those last ordinary details would become painful symbols of everything unknown. What was she thinking that day? Where was she going? And why did she leave without telling anyone? 24 hours later, Maura's Saturn would be found wrecked in a snowbank en route. 112 airbags deployed, driver's seat empty. The timeline was precise, the evidence minimal, and the silence overwhelming. From here, the story would expand far beyond a single car accident. This is where speculation began, but also where investigators focus on fact. It was a quiet Monday evening in Haverhill, New Hampshire, when headlights cut through a stretch of snow-covered highway known as Route 112, a rural, twisting road bordered by woods and frozen fields. Around 7:27 p.m., a local resident heard a loud crash. Moments later, she looked out her window and saw a black Saturn sedan lodged in a snowbank, facing the wrong direction. The driver's side airbag had deployed. The windshield was cracked. Inside, the car's blinkers flashed, casting amber reflections across the snow, but no one appeared hurt or panicked. From the outside, it looked like a simple roadside accident, but within minutes, it would become the star of one of the most enduring unsolved disappearances in modern American history. The first person to approach was Butch Atwood, a local school bus driver heading home from his evening route. He noticed the car and stopped to offer help. Through the window, he saw a young woman, dark hair, small build, standing near the driver's side. She appeared cold but calm. Butch later told police she declined his offer to call for help, saying, "I've already called AAA." He drove the short distance home, parked his bus, and phoned the Haverhill Police Department to report the accident. Records confirm his call came in at 7:42 p.m., roughly 15 minutes after crash. When Sergeant Cecil Smith arrived at the scene, the Saturn was empty. The driver was gone. The engine had been turned off, but the hazard lights were still flashing. The doors were locked, and inside, police found an open box of Franzia wine behind the driver's seat, a partially filled bottle of alcohol in the cup holder, a map of New Hampshire folded neatly on the dashboard. The airbag module indicated a moderate front-end collision, but there was no blood, no sign of struggle, and no footprints leading far from the vehicle. Searchers noticed faint footprints heading east along the road, but they disappeared after about 100 yards, blending into tire tracks and fresh snowfall. A scent tracking dog later followed that same trail, then abruptly lost it near the intersection of Route 112 and Bradley Hill Road. Investigators would later note this could mean several things. The scent was lost due to cold wind and snow. The individual entered another vehicle, or she simply walked beyond the scent radius before conditions changed. No conclusion could be proven. Police began canvassing nearby homes. Some residents recalled seeing flashing lights and a person walking quickly on the roadside, but no one saw where she went. The car was towed from the scene later that night for examination. When officers traced the registration, they learned the vehicle belonged to Maura, a student from Amherst, Massachusetts. They contacted her family, who were unaware she'd left town. Her father, Fred, immediately drove to New Hampshire, beginning what would become a years-long personal search for his daughter. Investigators noted several unusual details. Maura's belongings were still in the car. Her wallet, ATM card, and cell phone were missing. A rag was found stuffed into the tailpipe, possibly from her father's earlier instruction to reduce smoke from the engine, though the exact reason remains unknown. The car had no mechanical failure. The crash appeared low speed. These clues painted a picture that was both ordinary and alarming, a minor roadside accident that somehow escalated into a complete disappearance. Phone records show her last known cell activity occurred shortly before 7 p.m. when she checked her voicemail. After that, the phone went silent. No outgoing calls, no pings, no data. In 2004, rural New Hampshire had limited cell coverage, complicating search efforts. Still, investigators hoped she'd reach a friend, a motel, or simply walk to safety. But as hours turned to days, hope began to fade. At dawn, New Hampshire Fish and Game joined the effort. Officers, dogs, and volunteers combed the surrounding woods. Despite snow and sub-zero temperatures, no trace of Maura was found. Not a glove, a footprint, or a torn fabric. Her father stood by the road as crews searched, convinced she couldn't have gone far. But by sunset on February 10th, the official search yielded nothing. It was as if she'd stepped off the road and out of existence. The crash was over, but the questions had just begun. What made Maura drive more than 100 miles away from home? Why decline help and vanish minutes later? In the coming days, police, family, and eventually the online community would turn the smallest fragment of evidence into a massive nationwide effort. Next, we follow the investigation as it expands from quiet New Hampshire road into one of the internet's first major cold case phenomena. The crash site was only the beginning. Within 24 hours of Maura Murray's disappearance, local police, state investigators, and New Hampshire Fish and Game launched one of the most extensive coordinated searches in the state's history. Helicopters sent tracking dogs, snowmobiles, and over 100 volunteers swept across a 5-mile radius surrounding Route 112. Yet despite the scale, there was nothing. No footprints beyond the road. No clothing or dropped items. No signs of struggle. The landscape itself seemed to erase her presence. In missing person investigations, the first 2 days are crucial. Detectives began building a timeline, retracing Maura's movements before the crash. Phone records, ATM withdrawals, and gas station receipts confirmed her northbound route. At 7:27 p.m., the crash. At 7:46 p.m., the first officer arrives. By 8 p.m., she's gone. But there was something puzzling. Number 911 call was ever made from her phone. Investigators checked cellular coverage in the area. Signal strength was weak. It's possible she tried and failed to connect, but there's no record to prove it. On February 11th, 2 days after her disappearance, scent dogs again followed a trail east in the car, the same short path before losing it near Bradley Hill Road. Experts explain that cold, windy conditions can scatter scent molecules, especially over snow. Still, the abrupt ending to the trail reinforced a chilling theory. Maura might have entered another vehicle, but no witnesses saw a car stop. No tire marks suggested a pickup. The case remained suspended between two possibilities: an accident survivor who wandered away, or a person who left that scene on perp. OS. State investigators canvassed local motels, hospitals, and bus stations. They circulated Maura's photograph and vehicle description across New England. Detectives also searched the car again, finding several key items. Her class notes and assignments neatly packed. A stuffed toy monkey, a personal item from her dorm, a box of wine and travel-sized liquor bottles. Small details that would later feed internet theories, but reveal little about her intentions. Fingerprints inside the car matched only Maura's. By Wednesday, February 11th, Maura's father, Fred Murray, and other relatives had arrived in New Hampshire. Frustrated by limited updates, they organized their own search groups and pressed for broader law enforcement support. Locals described seeing flyers on every pole, every storefront, a picture of Maura's smiling face beneath the words "missing" and "please help U.S. find her." That image would soon travel far beyond Haverhill. In the weeks that followed, the disappearance caught national attention. Newspapers ran headlines like "Student Vanishes in the Snow." Television crews arrived, interviewing residents and family members. The story had all the hallmarks of mystery that wouldn't let go. A young woman, an isolated crash, and no physical trace. For journalists, it was compelling. For investigators, it was confounding. Despite the evidence vacuum, investigators explored all possibilities. Could Maura have wandered off and succumbed to hypothermia? Could she have accepted a ride from someone and vanished willingly? Or did she plan a new life, leaving everything behind? None of these theories could be confirmed. The only certainty was that a promising student had disappeared without a sound. By the end of the first week, the official search scaled back. But for her family, it was just beginning. In 2004, GPS tracking and real-time phone location services were rare. Investigators couldn't triangulate her phone signal accurately, and bank transaction systems weren't as immediate as they are today. That digital gap, a technological limitation of its time, allowed the trail to fade faster than modern systems would permit. Still, detectives preserve her phone data and vehicle for future forensic testing, a decision that would prove important in later reviews. As days turned into weeks, Maura's loved ones remained on-site distributing flyers, coordinating volunteers, and retracing search routes daily. They spoke to the press with both hope and exhaustion. Her father repeatedly stated, "She didn't run away. Something happened here." But with no new evidence, the investigation slowed. Leads thinned, and into that silence, the internet began to speak. The year was 2004, the dawn of online forums, early social media, and a new age of citizen investigation. As official leads cooled, digital communities reignited the case, dissecting timelines, maps, and theories from behind screens. The search for Maura Murray was about to move from New Hampshire's backroads to the global web. When the physical search in New Hampshire yielded no results, a new kind of investigation began. Not on the ground, but online. By 2005, Maura Murray's case had moved from police bulletins to message boards, forums, and early social media platforms. And in the process, it became one of the first internet-driven true crime investigations of the modern era. True crime enthusiasts, amateur sleuths, and retired investigators began sharing theories, analyzing maps, and compiling timelines on sites like WebSleuths and Reddit. For many, this was more than curiosity. It was digital volunteering. They built databases of known facts, transcribed interviews, and geotagged possible sighting locations. But as attention grew, so did misinformation, speculation, and frustration. Some users analyzed grainy photographs or satellite images, believing they'd spotted clues. Others mapped every phone record, searching for gaps in time. For Maura's family, the attention was both a blessing and a burden. Over time, three main theories dominated online discussions. Accident theory, the simplest explanation that Maura became disoriented after crash, wandered into woods, and succumbed to freezing temperatures. Supporters of this theory point to the cold, the rural terrain, and her thin clothing that night. However, extensive searches, including with cadaver dogs and infrared aerial scans, found no remains. Foul play theory. Another group believed Maura accepted a ride or encountered someone who meant her harm. This theory cites the sudden loss of scent at the intersection and the total absence of footprints beyond the road. Yet, despite decades of investigation, no suspect have ever been publicly identified, and no physical evidence supports this conclusion. 3. The voluntary disappearance theory. A smaller group argued she may have chosen to leave her life behind. They referenced the planned emails, her search for remote lodgings, and personal pressures. Still, Maura's family and most investigators have consistently rejected this idea, pointing out her strong family ties and future plans. Despite public speculation, New Hampshire State Police maintain control of the case, treating it as an active missing person investigation. Detectives re-interviewed witnesses, retested evidence, and periodically searched new areas. In later years, private searches organized by volunteers and family members would revisit old sites with newer technology, including ground-penetrating radar and drone scans. Each time, no new evidence was found. For police, the lack of evidence was both the mystery and the obstacle. As the internet evolved, so did the way people engage with cold cases. Podcasts, YouTube documentaries, and digital databases gave Maura's case renewed visibility every few years. By the mid-2010s, she became one of the most discussed missing persons in online history, mentioned in documentaries, college courses, and even case studies on media ethics. For many digital detectives, her story symbolized something deeper, how a single mystery could outlive generations of investigators through the power of connection. Throughout it all, Maura's family has remained dedicated yet cautious. Her father, Fred Murray, spent years requesting official documents and leading his own search efforts. In later interviews, he expressed gratitude for genuine interest, but also pain at the conspiracy theories that often overshadowed his daughter's humanity. He once said, "People talk about her case like it's a puzzle, but to us, she's a person." The Maura Murray case raises important questions about the balance between public curiosity and respect for privacy. It demonstrates the power and danger of crowdsourced investigation, how ordinary people can amplify awareness, but also how easily fact blurs with fiction. For every digital breakthrough, there's a reminder. Behind every mystery is a real life still missing. Nearly 2 decades later, Maura's case remains open. Advances in DNA technology, digital forensics, and public data access continue to offer hope that new answers may emerge. But until they do, the mystery endures, part accident, part enigma, and wholly human. 20 years have passed since February 9th, 2004, and still, one question lingers in the cold New Hampshire air. Where is Maura Murray? Over the years, advances in forensic science have reshaped how investigators review the evidence. Every clue, every report, every item recovered that night revisited under new light. In the early 2010s, investigators confirmed that forensic testing had been conducted on Maura's car and items from the crash site. Samples were analyzed for DNA, fibers, and possible third-party involvement, but the results were either inconclusive or matched only Maura herself. The Saturn, now preserved as evidence, remains one of the most studied vehicles in missing person history. New forensic methods like touch DNA and trace particle analysis continue to offer hope. Technologies that didn't exist in 2004 could now extract information invisible to the naked eye. As digital forensics evolved, law enforcement revisited Maura's cell phone and email records using updated analytics. Modern algorithms can sometimes reveal data patterns missed in early investigations, such as movement paths, signal triangulation, or hidden metadata. While no breakthrough has been publicly confirmed, these re-examinations have kept the case active in both official and independent review channels. The cold case isn't frozen. It's evolving slowly with science. In the years since, both police and volunteers have conducted targeted ground searches using drones, sonar, and radar imaging. Each new generation of search tools has extended the reach into previously inaccessible terrain. In 2019, the New Hampshire State Police Cold Case Unit publicly reaffirmed their active interest in resolving Maura's disappearance. They remain open to credible leads and new information from the public. But to date, no confirmed evidence, no remains, no closure. Beyond the investigation, Maura Murray's case became a turning point for the true crime community. It marked a cultural shift where technology, curiosity, and compassion merged to keep cold cases alive. Journalists, podcasters, and documentarians studied her story not just for mystery, but for meaning. How do people disappear so completely? And what keeps us searching decades later? Her story inspired renewed advocacy for missing person databases, female safety awareness, and advancements in cold case research funding. Maura's family has remained steadfast. Her father continues to call for transparency, believing that answers, however small, still lie hidden in the data, the land, or someone's memory. Her sisters often said, Maura was loved deeply, and that love will not stop until she's found. For them, justice isn't about punishment, it's about truth and peace. Whether by accident, misfortune, or something darker, Maura's story changed how America viewed missing persons. It showed that a mystery doesn't end with silence, that communities can carry a case forward, one clue at a time. Her name remains one of the most searched missing person keywords on the internet. Not because of sensationalism, but because of collective empathy, the human drive to not forget. The road she traveled that night still stands quiet, cold, and endless, but for those who continue the search. Route 112 is not just a highway. It's a promise that one day, the truth will no longer hide beneath the S. Now, if Maura Murray's story moved you, remember, every unsolved case is a call to awakening. Subscribe to Crimes and Clues to join a community that believes in truth, compassion, and justice that never expires. And in the comments, tell us, what do you think happened that night on Route 112? Your voice keeps these stories alive because justice delayed is not justice denied.